episode 1 of the Brutally Honest podcast. Dom, we've come a long way. I was just looking, I think 4th of February 2022 was the first time I ever did an interview with you in the gym, and it was about Liam Williams. Do you remember that?
I do actually, yeah. I think it was the time when he'd left and he was due to fight Chris Eubank before Christmas that year, and it ended up getting knocked back into the new year. And we must have been talking about after the fight, surely, if it was February. Must have been after the fight.
I can't remember, but I think he'd basically just left, and we did a bit of an interview thing. And I remember it was on a mobile phone. Boxing King Media was running on mobile phones, but we thought we'd do a bit of an upgrade with microphones and cameras, etc., and turn this into a bit of a podcast thing, because the amount of people are always asking about wanting to see these interviews, or not see them, but listen to them on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that kind of stuff. Got no idea how to get stuff on there, but this is going to be available on there at some point, so I appreciate you doing this in that format. So you've been in Spain, Marbella?
I've been in Marbella last week for a couple of days. I've had some clients out there and a long-time friend who I went to see, and it might be a possible business venture. I'm toying with the idea of opening a boxing gym out there. I think it'd be quite good. So I've just been looking at a couple of venues. Quite like Marbella, actually. It's nice and warm.
I didn't kind of picture you as somebody being... the
mobs crowd.
Yeah.
No, well, I suppose you have to find it, don't you? But it's not for me in that sense. But it's got a good vibe. There's some good food places, some good weight training gyms. It's got a nice seafront where you can walk. Plenty of coffee shops, which will suit me. You know, walking a few kilometres, sitting down having a coffee. Walking a bit further, sitting down having another coffee. And it's all good healthy food out there as well. So I think it'd suit me, that.
Good stuff. Well, I'm not sure how expensive it is to fly across to Marbella, but I'm going to have to fly across to Marbella to get these interviews. So I don't know if you've been catching up with the boxing. We'll rewind back a few weeks because it's been a while since we caught up. I want to start off with DILLIAN WHYTE's comeback. He came back in Castlebar in your homeland of Dublin. I understand that he fought there because it was outside the British jurisdiction with regards to licenses, etc. Did you watch his fight with Christian Hammer?
No, I didn't watch it, but I have actually been to Castlebar. We had a couple of fighters on there a few years back. It's right over on the west coast of Ireland, and I've been to that venue. We had somebody fighting on that. So, but I didn't watch DILLIAN WHYTE's fight, but I know he got the win.
What do you make of him fighting in Dublin? Obviously, the history, we know that he just got cleared by the Texas Commission, and he had his issue with the failed test, but it's all been cleared. And obviously, there's nothing come from the British Boxing Board with regards to whether he can fight in England or not. But the assumption is he fought there because I'm assuming he can't.
Well, maybe, or just maybe that somebody was interested enough to put the money up to put him on that bill. You've got to think of that scenario as well. He's got his name cleared. He sat it out for a year and a half, I think it was, and he kept his mouth shut, and he didn't speculate on anything. And whichever way he's gone about it, he's got his name cleared, and that's fair enough.
Yeah, you said that to me a while ago about keeping your mouth shut. How important is that in a scenario where you fail a test? Because obviously we didn't see. Because he technically wasn't promoted by Eddie Hearn, so we didn't see Eddie really talking about him. All Eddie kept saying was, I've not spoken to him. DILLIAN didn't do any media, and the first bit of media we got was when he got cleared.
I think, he's probably learned that, going online or on social media, trying to prove your innocence to people and talk your way out of it doesn't really work. What really matters is the cold, hard facts. And after the third time, I think, of failing the test, I think he's realised that, and he's done his research, he's got the proper team behind him, he's got the information, and he's gone about his business and, got his name cleared. So, fair play to him. Whatever he's done. And, he's had a year and a half out. He didn't box in that period of time. So he's not, jeopardised himself in any way. And he's got his win, and he's probably back in the mix.
So I want to get your opinion on, obviously, and again, this isn't actually from Dillian, this is what was on Sky Sports. Sky Sports basically said that the adverse finding was basically down to Dillian being a victim of contamination of nutritional supplements.
Well, I think I've said in lots and lots of interviews that we've done that people think failing a drug test is simply black and white, and it's not simply black and white. And there's always a grey area, and people say there's no such thing as contamination. There is such thing as contamination. Everything's contaminated these days. Supplements, food chain, stuff in the food chain, there's contamination. I mean, years ago we had a famous case in Britain where we were all eating horse meat without knowing about it. And
who's eating that?
Yeah, people put into the supermarket chain. I think it was Tesco's.
I thought you meant you and your gym were eating horse meat.
No. Well, probably was actually, but yeah. So it was the food chain got contaminated with horse meat, and people have forgot about that. So. And it's the same with supplementation, because there's no really regulation in supplementation or supplements, although there are certain companies, Inform Sport, who do a rigorous testing on the supplements, and athletes who are top flight athletes use them products and they're tested, so there's no chance of contamination. But the majority, I'd say 80-90% of supplements on the market can be open to contamination.
And again, obviously, Dillian, what he did was fairly clever, just staying quiet and letting it all roll out, and eventually, obviously, he's got himself cleared. But obviously, because of his previous, and I know he said in interviews he doesn't really give a shit about what people think or say, but people are always going to raise the past and say, well, similar sort of thing happened with you before. So if you've been done for, taking a contaminated supplement, would you not be like super extra careful?
Well, there's some people I know, and I've worked with some fighters who don't take any vitamin supplements. They're very, very careful about what they eat because they're so paranoid about failing a drug test. They don't take any supplements whatsoever. And they won't even take supplements what have gone through the process of being tested either. And then there's some athletes who are really blasé and think, well, I think when people are saying they're getting done for contamination, they're just making that up as an excuse. So I think with Dillian White is that I think the first time when he failed the test, I was at that fight, and he was zoomed up, as I like to say. He was on a product that had got a stimulant in, and he was probably unaware because at the time, he was new on the market, this particular supplement with the stimulant in, and he got a 2-year ban for that. So if you're somebody who's always going to be taking supplements, you're always going to be running the risk of there's that minute chance that something could be contaminating what you're taking. So I think even when you cut out the supplements, we had that with Conor Benn, didn't we? That he turned around and famously said it was out of the eggs. So whichever way it is, if it's not supplements, it's going to be food. But it always sounds like when somebody fails a drug test and they claim contamination, it's just an escape route.
Just slight adjustment on the microphone there. So that leads me on to a potential opponent for Dillian. We saw Joyce a couple of weeks back now fighting one of your former fighters, Kash Ali. I think the build up into that fight, most people expected Joe to stop Kash in a couple of rounds, 3 rounds. But Kash, in most people's eyes, was unlucky not to see the distance because of that count at the end. What did you make of the fight?
To be honest, I've trained Kash Ali. I don't think he's ever really met or got to realise his potential. Maybe that's just the type of person he is. But I've known him from being a young kid, 14 years old. I trained him for his early fights, and I personally didn't expect Kash to go that long, 10 rounds. And Joyce, didn't look anything special. It's almost like he probably looked at Kash Ali and thought, this kid's not going to cause me any problems, and maybe only trained 50%. But it was a shame that Kash got stopped in the last round when really he should have just gone out. If I'd have got through that fight with if I hadn't got in that fight with Joyce, and I was in the position where I was losing every round, I think for the last round I'd have just run around and survived the distance and had some credibility. But to get stopped in the last round, after getting through 9 previous rounds, it's kind of took the shine off Kash, hasn't it? So, he should have just gone out there and tried to survive, got through it, and box clever and live to fight another day. That's what you need to do. And, he didn't do that. He went out and he got himself chinned and ended up on the floor.
And before I move on to Joe, can you see a future for Kash in the domestic, in the domestic ranks, like people like Johnny Fisher, there's Dave Allen out there?
Really, because he's not really got anybody behind him, backing him, has he? And I think he's got to be 30 years old by now, I would imagine. He might even be older than 30. So, he boxed David Price, he's boxed a few other kids. What probably would be a good fight for him, actually, would probably be Dave Allen somewhere in the future. But I don't think he's ever going to... I think after that performance, I don't think Kash is ever going to get into the big mix, because I think he's had his opportunities. And he's never really shone or proved himself to be in that kind of mix.
And then obviously Joe, a lot of people are saying that he looked slower than ever, and obviously he was, I think, nearly 2 stone heavier in weight from his previous fights. What did you make of that? Was he slower than ever?
Well, if he's heavier and he's 2 stone heavy, he's obviously going to be slower. And what is he now, 38 as well? So he's slowing down. He's obviously had them 2 losses to Zhang, and
also known as Chang in Dom.
Chang and Wu-Tu, Tang Clang Ku, whatever, I don't know. Wu-Tang Clang, I think there's a band called it, the Wu-Tang Clang. Anyway,
they're American.
Eh?
They're American.
Yeah, but they got a Chinese name.
Yeah.
So so the losses to him, and then you see what Job Parker did on him. It's like, I don't think it's almost like now they're trying to get some other heavyweight into this heavyweight mix in Saudi to pick up some money, and trying to chuck Joyce into that mix. And I don't know if he's going to get into that mix. But I tell you, another good fight would probably be Joyce again, rematch against Parker, because obviously Joyce beat Parker, didn't he?
He did.
And Parker's showing great form at the minute, and I think maybe Parker might like that revenge fight. Maybe he might just look and think, I don't need that, but that could be a fight. But I just think Joyce has passed his best. I mean, he started in the pros late anyway. Had a decent amateur career, but he just probably left it too late.
But when you say, because I've got to try and defend him here, because prior to the first loss to Zhang, everybody was saying the only person that could beat Tyson Fury is Joe Joyce because of his pressure.
I would never agree with that. I think that, look, what people don't look at is that, what did we used to hear about Joyce? Oh, he's got a solid chin. He's like a truck. You can hit him with anything. And he did take some big shots. Look at when he boxed Dubois, he was taking big shots, and Dubois was a young kid coming through. But every time you're getting hit in the face, it's damaging you. It's chipping a little bit off you every single time. And, that became apparent when he boxed Zhang. And, he got caught with a peach of a shot, and then he got done the second time. So his resistance has gone now to big shots. And if that was one of his selling points and one of his fortes, well, he has not got that anymore.
Could it be a case of maybe them shots were just too good, and on that day Zhang was such a big puncher, it just caught him clean? And
all right, well,
I'm just putting a different argument on it.
It might be, but all I'm saying to you is he's knocking on his 38, which is old for an heavyweight, and he's got done in by the same fella. He's had a bit of an easy job with Kash Ali, because realistically Kash Ali shouldn't have even been in that fight really on what he's done in the past. So what I think will happen with Joyce is I can't see anybody in the big names not beating him. So whoever he goes in with next, who's going to be a name, unless they get him another stiff, then he's going to get seriously hurt, because they know they've all got to do is hit him on the button, and that's it. That's my opinion, because he's had wear and tear. So, when you're seeing somebody getting knocked out back to back by the same guy, obviously Zhang's going into that fight and thinking, I've had him the first time, all I've got to do is connect and I know he's going to go, and he did. So, the word is this, they say all of a sudden they've become chinny, but it's not really that. It's just that he has stopped a lot of shots all the way through his amateur career, all the way through his professional career. He stopped shots with his face. It's a fight, but that don't last forever. It don't last forever.
And the potential next fight for him is Dillian White. That's the rumoured fight if it takes place in Saudi Arabia. Where do you see that one? Because Dillian 35, but obviously he's been inactive. Joyce, obviously they both came in quite heavy compared to the normal weights. You know, who would you favour in a fight like that?
I don't know why I've just got this thought in my mind of two hippopotamuses in a big lake in Africa, like going at it, and all the water and all the splashing going about, and it just looks a lot of mud flying about, and it don't look pretty at all, because they're probably both way past the best. And I didn't see Dillian's last fight, so I can't really comment. So I'd have to have a rewatch of his last fight. I've obviously seen Joyce, and I think you might have to ask me that question a bit closer to the fight. But it's not going to be pretty to watch, trust me.
Well, I don't know if you know or not, but hippos have got the strongest bite from all land animals. Did you know that? That's something I know.
Well, I'll tell you what you won't know about hippopotamuses is why can they walk on the bottom of a lake and walk in water? Do you know why they can do that?
Something to do with the belly, maybe? I don't know.
No, they've got the most dense legs. The legs, it's the weight in the legs what keep them down there. So that's why they can walk on the bottom of water. So yeah, but you know, I
think only an alligator can bite, has a stronger bite than a hippo, I think.
Well, there's actually a video I saw on social media where, and it won't be an alligator, it'll be a crocodile, I think, because alligators are in America and crocodiles are in Africa, I think, anyway.
It is alligator.
Is it alligator?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I saw something like a crocodile attacking a young hippopotamus, and the gang of hippopotamuses jumped on this crocodile and absolutely wiped it out. So, you know,
good effort.
They might have got the strongest. Well, the crocodiles or the alligators might have got a strong grip, but when you come up against a group of hippos, you know, you got to be careful, ain't you?
The moral of the story: don't mess with the hippo. And then Dom, we move on. Conor Benn today, and again, it's worth highlighting the fact that this isn't official news. This has come from the same journalist that actually broke the initial story of Conor failing a test, and I think the same journalist also reported the all the ongoing stuff that was happening, you know, in between the whole long saga that's been going on. But apparently today he's reported that the British Boxing Board have won their appeal. We don't know what that means. We're assuming that it means that Conor may have to potentially serve out a ban or potentially go back to a case with the British Boxing Board and try and prove that he's innocent, basically.
Well, obviously a few months ago he had some kind of appeal, and they overruled the Board of Control, or they overruled UTURN, whoever it was. I can't remember who overruled it, whether it was the NADP, which is National Association Anti-Doping, whatever, Anti-Doping Panel, yeah, National Anti-Doping Panel, NADP. And I think the journalist who reported on it said that the reason that they ruled in Benn's favour in the first place is because at the time when he was tested by the board, his British Boxing Board of Control licence had expired. He hadn't renewed it, and therefore it wasn't their jurisdiction to test him. So it was like a technicality, so to speak. So it was overruled, and then obviously the board said they would appeal it, and they did appeal it, and it's gone to the National Anti-Doping Panel, and they said, yeah, we're upholding the original decision. And, you know, Conor Benn remains banned by UTURN and the Board of Control. So it just makes you wonder whether he'd have just been better in the first place. I mean, how many fights? Has he had 2 or 3 fights? He's had 2 fights since his ban. And I would imagine we're not close off 2 years, are we?
About 2 years, yeah, I think.
Yeah, so if he'd have actually just, you know, put his hand up and said, well, you know, I don't know why this has happened, but I'm going to have to take full responsibility. He might have just got a 2-year ban, I think. and he'd be free to box. And with the fights, the fights what are coming up now, and the fights in Saudi, he could have afforded to sit out for 2 years, and gone into big fights in Saudi and made a fortune. But it's patience, isn't it? It's like DILLIAN WHYTE had to do 2 years, Kid Gallagher had to do 2 years, Tyson Fury did 2 years. It's like you've got to do it. If you get the decision against you, you can't say, well, I don't like that, I'm going to go somewhere else. You sign up to abide by the rules. So what do you say to that? You can't circumvent them. Sooner or later, it's going to come back and bite you in the arse, innit?
I just want to draw comparisons between his case and Alicia Baumgardner and DILLIAN's case. So obviously DILLIAN's case, it was proven that he took contaminated supplements. Alicia Baumgardner's case, I think that the key bits that stick out are there's an issue around, there was like a 9-day delay where the tests were transported to where they were supposed to get to the lab. There was a 9-day delay in that. And then basically she gave up a hair sample quite early in the investigation, which apparently proved that going back to June of that year, she didn't have any drugs in her system.
Well, so she's saying because of a 9-day delay that's why samples come back.
I think
faulty. Well, let's look at this then. It's like generally when they do transportation, it's another technicality that there have been cases, what I've read in the past, where you've got hormone level. There's obviously hormones in your urine. With men, it's testosterone. With women, estrogen, testosterone, whatever. So there are certain ways that if it's not transported properly or kept cooled or whatever, it can actually show that you've got increased levels of stuff you're not supposed to have, like natural stuff in your body. Like one of them is nandrolone, testosterone, and nandrolone is a banned substance, but it's naturally occurring in men and women. So if it's not refrigerated properly or transported properly, they're saying that it can, in theory, increase the level of it in your sample. Now, the drug she got caught with was an anabolic steroid, what's not naturally occurring in your body. It's manufactured. So she's saying that because of this 9-day period of where it's not being transported properly, that this drug has just mysteriously appeared in a sample from nowhere. Well, that's what it's basically saying.
Well, the other part of that is that she gave up a hair sample.
All right, so there's a famous quote by a politician called George Canning, and it says, "You can use statistics to prove anything apart from the truth." And if hair sampling was accurate and a good way to detect the use of drugs, 6 months prior, why then do all of the drug testing agencies use primarily blood and urine first over hair? Because blood and urine's not as long as 6 months. It's less, although the testing methods are better. Well, why don't they just use hair?
Why don't they?
Well, exactly, why don't they? It'd probably be cheaper as well. So who's saying that it's more reliable? Who's saying that taking hair samples is more reliable? The people who are promoting taking hair samples and testing. It's like you can use the information to prove anything you want, can't you? So she's saying, I had a hair sample, but it's not really that. They didn't take a hair sample on the night, did they? They didn't take a hair sample after she fought. They took blood and urine. If that's what they did, usually they do for world title fights. They usually take blood and urine. Well, how hard is it to take a bit of your hair? It's not, and you've got to have at least 6 centimeters of hair to get a test anyway. So, why don't they do hair, urine, and blood? That's why you have to ask the question. So she's waited a couple of weeks. So she might have even waited months. And have they said that they've took 6 centimeters of hair? Or have they used 1 centimeter of recent growth? Has she had her head shaved and it grown back? Who knows what they've done? There's all, unless you get the full information and the full breakdown and the full procedure of what they actually did in date stamps. She failed the drug on this date. They took a urine and they took a blood the day of the fight. How many weeks and months after has it been time stamped hair sample? Was it 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks? When? Because every week what goes on, do you understand? It kind of lessens the credibility of it, doesn't it? Also, did she have her hair cut?
Well, the actual wording is, Baumgardner professed her innocence throughout the process and complied with the terms set forth by all 4 sanctioning bodies and the ABC. It included multiple random drug tests as well as Baumgardner's own decision to submit a hair sample as part of an independent investigation.
Yeah, but when were random drug tests? After the fight?
Well, it says the provided sample was sufficient enough to test as far as back as last June, and obviously the failed test was a month after.
You said she complied with all the tests, with all the 4 governing bodies.
That's what the press release on it was, and I think basically what they're saying is that the hair sample that she gave, I'm assuming maybe October time, could test far back as June before the failed test that came about. So I don't know. Is that stuff accurate?
I'm just saying. But if it was, why don't they, for the avoidance of doubt, if hair testing was that good, why didn't they take hair, urine, and blood? Why wouldn't they? It's easy enough to do.
It's definitely a question out there for the right people, maybe the promoters. Why don't we just do that? Would it be a lot simpler? And obviously in Conor Benn's scenario now, we've got DILLIAN WHYTE who's coming back now, a kind of fight again. Obviously, we don't know if he'll be. Do you think he'll be allowed to fight under the British Boxing Board based on his Texas Commission license?
I doubt it. He's got to be. Look.
Would they expect him to go through some sort of process with them?
Well, if he was going to be. If he's going to be cleared by the board, if he wants to be cleared by the board, why didn't he go through the board's procedure? Why did he go to Texas? Why Texas?
But then there's an argument. What if Alicia Baumgardner wants to fight in the UK? Would she have to be cleared by?
If she was going to box, if she failed in the UK, did she fail in the UK?
No, it would have been America.
Right.
Yeah.
If she failed in the UK,
and I'm assuming DILLIAN's test may have come from a test maybe in Portugal.
Well, wait a minute. So, if you fight in the UK and you fail a test in the UK, like if I take a boxer abroad and whatever country and they do a drug test and they fail, they have to face the board in that country where they failed the drug test. So if you look on UCAD, you can see all the cases from the past and foreign fighters, and it's surprising who's on there. When they box in England and they've been tested and they failed, they've had to face UCAD and come to England and do it. So Portugal's in Europe.
Yeah.
How's the connection with Texas? How we got to Texas?
Apparently that's through DILLIAN's license by the Texas Boxing Commission.
Right. So
apparently he's been licensed by them most of his career, from what he said in an interview.
Right. So he's probably So that's fine then.
So he's only accountable to them.
Where did he get tested in Portugal?
I'm assuming Portugal, or wherever he was doing his camp. Might be in America. I don't know.
So. But who tested him? VADA.
VADA, yeah.
Right. Well, it's that with VADA. Then it's a case of usually they send the results to the sanctioning body of whose banner is fighting under. So yeah, he's probably a smart move there, because he's probably had a look around and thought, I'll get licensed. He might not listen after the cases with the board. He might not have no faith in the board or their procedure, so he's quite within his rights. I
think the argument you could raise here is, so it sounds like Alicia Baumgardner would be able to fight here again, even though she obviously her issue was in the US.
If she's been cleared in her country, then she can fight by the board, because it's not the board, is it? She's been cleared by her own governing body or her own country. And if Conor Benn had been cleared by his own country, he'd be able to fight in his own country, and the border control on his license would allow him permission to box abroad on their license. But because he didn't get cleared by the board of control, he's gone somewhere else and got a license. So that's what they've done. Baumgardner's been cleared by her own country or her own governing body.
Yeah, the reason I'm saying that is because it appears that the Conor argument is all over jurisdiction. So it's a kind of a similar argument. If you're not licensed by a particular board, are you still held accountable? It's a messy scenario. But
the thing is, he's been a British fighter all his career.
Yeah.
So that's who he's got to answer to. It's like,
do you think, to conclude on this, if they go down the whole banning route, would he have to restart a whole ban, because he's fought twice, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's not accepted his ban, has he? He's never going to box. Look, in my opinion, he's never going to box. He's never going to get his license granted by by the British Boxing Board of Control, because he's not going to back the procedure the right way. And if he does, he's going to have to... There's nothing he can... I don't think there's anything he can give him, because if he could have given him something to prove his innocence, he'd be done. So I think his best choice is, he's got a licence, and he's got to have some big fight with somebody to make some money. He needs 2 or 3 fights to make a load of money, and that's him done. Because, you know, he's between a rock and a hard place. So, for me, Conor Benn against Chris Eubank, Conor Benn against, you know, say Josh Taylor, or Conor Benn against Kell Brook, or some big British name. Conor Benn is only a big name in Britain. He's only ever going to pull the crowds in from Britain. The biggest fights he's going to have is on British soil against British fighters. I don't think there's that much interest outside of Britain for him, you know, in Saudi or in America. So people will turn up to watch him because he's Conor Benn, and you know he will probably pack out Wembley, or you know the O2 or the big arenas against them names. That's where he's going to make the money. He's not going to make it in other countries.
Okay, well, let's see how this unfolds. Again, like I said, it's all just based on an article, nothing official.